All right, welcome back, everybody. We're going to continue with Siddhartha chapter 3. I hope you're enjoying yourself. You are reading a novel in English, which, great job. I hope this is useful. Make sure to like and subscribe. Um, Add any comments, and I will answer. Also, here's RJK English on Facebook. Uh, Meet me on here and I will answer any of your questions for any of these videos. Or just post a question that you have in general. You can also message me there. All right, let's get going. So we've seen the Buddha and we've described him. He's full of peace just in the way he looks. He hasn't said anything, but somehow his perfectness, the fact that he has become one with the Brahman, with Atman, it shows in the way he looks. And Siddhartha caught him right away. He knew who he was, even though he didn't physically look like anyone else. Okay, so Gautama, the Buddha, wandered into the town to obtain alms. Alms are always things given to religious figures for free, like charity. To obtain alms, and the two samanas, Siddhartha and Govinda, recognized him only by his complete peacefulness of demeanor. Demeanor is the way I act or look, my demeanor, my general demeanor. The Buddha had complete peacefulness of demeanor, not his clothes, just the way he was. They recognized him only by his complete peacefulness of demeanor, by the stillness of his form, in which there was no seeking, no will, no counterfeit, no effort, only light and peace. Hesse is, at least the translation of him, is mixing up tenses here, or use. You know, sometimes it's a noun of action. Sometimes it's a noun of something else. It's a little bit strange, but for an English speaker, we switch back and forth between these and it's fine. He's using it because he doesn't want to write too much. He wants to say everything in a very small amount, but very powerful. So they recognized him by his demeanor, his form, same thing as demeanor, in which there was no seeking. So they didn't see any seeking attitude in him. No willfulness, no counterfeit like cheating, no effort, no falsehood. He wasn't trying, he just had light and peace in him. Today we will hear the teachings from his own lips, said Govinda. You've heard this over and over. From his own lips, from his own mouth. You can use this phrase now in your own life. Siddhartha did not reply. He was not very curious about the teachings. Kind of weird, huh? He did not think that they would teach him anything new. He, as well as Govinda, had heard the substance of the Buddha's teaching. This means most of the Buddha's teachings. Sometimes we say the meat of his teachings. You know, the things that you would actually write notes about if he was giving a lecture. The substance of his teachings. If only from second and third hand reports. But he, Siddhartha, looked attentively at Gautama's head, his shoulders, at his feet, at his still and downward hanging hand. And it seemed to him that every joint of every finger in his hand, in every joint of every finger in his hand, there was knowledge. They spoke and breathed and radiated truth. This man, this Buddha, was truly a holy man. To his fingertips, this means completely, to the extremities, to his fingertips. Never had Siddhartha looked up to such a man so much. Never had he loved a man so much. So this reminds me of some musicians, rock musicians. They are people that they love rock music. And when they go out, they're with friends who those friends want to learn a particular style of rock music, right? But the great geniuses of rock, they're not looking for the exact music. They're looking for, what is that person like? What do they look like when they play? Why do they have this power in them when they play? Maybe this person is studying blues music and they see Muddy Waters You know, he is a famous blues musician. They look at him and they go, what is he like? Why when he sings does he have so much power? They're not necessarily looking for the exact way he plays guitar or something. They're looking for his essence. What is it about him that makes him magical? This is what it reminds me of. You know, or maybe you love a certain type of study. You know, maybe you're studying philosophy and you meet a philosopher that you love, the current philosopher, and you just watch him. What's he like? What makes him like that? You know, sometimes we watch our parents like that, right? We look at them and say, what is it about them that makes them successful? And you watch them, right? That's what he's doing with the Buddha. So he's not so interested in what the Buddha is teaching. He wants to be like the Buddha. He wants to be like the Buddha. He doesn't want to follow the Buddha. He wants to be like him. There's a difference. They both followed the Buddha into the town and returned in silence. They themselves intended to abstain from food that day. We use themselves because others were abstaining from food. They also were going to abstain from food. They themselves intended to not eat that day. They saw Gautama return, saw him take his meal with the circle of disciples. What he ate would not have satisfied a bird. He just ate a little bit. And they saw him withdraw into the, withdraw means to pull back, withdraw to the shade of the mango tree. In the evening, however, when the heat had abated, when it had lessened, and everyone in the camp was alert and gathered together, they heard the Buddha preach. They heard his voice, and this also was perfect, quiet, and full of peace. Gautama talked about suffering, the origin of suffering, the way to release from suffering. Life was pain, the world was full of suffering, but the path to the release from suffering had been found. There was salvation for those who went the way of the Buddha. Salvation is particularly a Western term. Salvation means to be saved from something. If I'm in a fire and someone takes me out of the fire, they have saved me. They are my salvation from the fire. So salvation here is a Western term, but the Buddha had actually been enlightened. He had seen the truth and experienced it fully. He had become the truth. And that truth was that the world is full of suffering and that there's a way to get out of suffering, to not feel suffering anymore. The illustrious one spoke in a soft but firm voice, taught the four main points, taught the Eightfold Path. These are the points of Buddhism. We can maybe look into them at some point. Patiently, he covered the usual method of teaching with examples and repetition. Clearly and quietly, his voice was carried to his listeners like a light, like a star in the heavens. So like the moon or the stars softly bring their light, not like the sun. The sun's like blinding. Softly his light was carried, softly his voice was carried to others. When the Buddha had finished, it was already night. Many pilgrims came forward and asked to be accepted into the community. And the Buddha accepted them and said, "You have listened well to the teachings. Join us then and walk in bliss. Put an end to suffering." And they joined the Buddha. So there were movements in India where you could join. But overall in India, under the Brahmin rules, you just were what you were. You know, you were a Brahmin, you were a Kshatriya, you didn't join something. But with these groups where there is a special charismatic leader, you can join them. In the West, we think of this as becoming Christian. Christianity is an evangelist religion. So is Islam. Hinduism is not. Buddhism is. You can join Buddhism. You don't have to be born into Buddhism. Okay, so we can see this. In America, this is a major part of our culture, is this idea of joining, of converting. This is a major part of our culture, especially of our music. So Govinda, when the Buddha had finished, they asked the Buddha to accept them. The Buddha accepted them and said, "You have listened well to the teachings. Join us then and walk in bliss." This means perfect happiness, bliss. "Put an end to suffering." Govinda, the shy one, also stepped forward and said, "I also wish to pay my allegiance to the illustrious one and his teachings." He asked to be taken into the community and was accepted. As soon as the Buddha had withdrawn for the night, Govinda turned to Siddhartha and said eagerly, "Siddhartha, it's not for me to reproach you." This means to try to teach you, but somewhat in a stern way. "We have both listened to the illustrious one. We have both heard his teachings. Govinda has listened to the teachings and has accepted them. But you, my dear friend, will you not also tread the path of salvation? Will you not also join? Will you delay? Will you still wait?" When he heard Govinda's words, Siddhartha awakened from his sleep. He looked at Govinda's face for a long time. Then he spoke softly, and there was no mockery in his voice. Notice, Siddhartha before was mocking him. Something has changed in how Siddhartha sees Govinda now. "Govinda, my dear friend, you have taken the step. You have chosen your path. You have always been my friend, Govinda. You have always gone a step behind me. Often I have thought, will Govinda ever take a step without me, from his own conviction? Now you are a man and have chosen your path." Govinda has grown up in Siddhartha's eyes. "May you go along it to the end, my friend. May you find salvation." So Siddhartha took his own path, right? He left his father. Govinda left with Siddhartha. But now Govinda is choosing his own path. And Siddhartha has greater respect for Govinda now. This is a bit of a Western view. So we see, from the West, we view selfhood as meaning you have to take your own path. You don't follow another. I don't know in India whether it's seen as the same thing, but this is Hesse's viewpoint on it, right? Now I want to say that this reminds me, if you know anything about the rock band the Rolling Stones, Keith Richards is the main guitar player in the Rolling Stones. Keith Richards was British. He is British. He's very old now. He loved blues music. He loved R&B. And his goal was to really learn it and then go to America and see the real blues players. Now there's another, I don't even know his name, but he's the backup guitar player. He plays rhythm in the background in the Rolling Stones. And Keith Richards has said before that he doesn't respect that guy, because he says all that guy does is follows. To Keith Richards, life is about finding your own passion and looking for it totally, and standing up to anybody criticizing you and doing your own thing. Okay? Somewhat like Siddhartha. And Keith Richards went to the US and he wanted to see the blues players. He wanted to watch them. What power did they have? Kind of like Siddhartha is watching the Buddha. And he tried to emulate them, to be like them in the way he acted, not just in the way he played, just like Siddhartha is doing. He wanted to be them. And the backup player, he felt like that backup player just went along with everybody else. So I don't know if that helps, but I think of this when I'm listening to this, when I'm reading this. So he says, "Govinda, my friend, you have taken the step. You have chosen your path. You have always been my friend, Govinda, but you have always gone a step behind me. Often I have thought, will Govinda ever take a step without me from his own conviction? Now you are a man. You have chosen your own path. May you go along it to the end, my friend. May you find salvation." Govinda, who did not yet fully understand, repeated his question impatiently. "Speak, my dear friend. Say that you also cannot do other than swear allegiance to the Buddha." Siddhartha placed his hand on Govinda's shoulder. You have heard my blessing, Govinda. I repeat it. May you travel this path to the end. May you find salvation. He's blessing Govinda, his friend. In that moment, Govinda realized his friend was leaving him and he began to weep. Siddhartha, he cried. Siddhartha spoke kindly to him. Do not forget, O Govinda, that you now belong to the Buddha's holy men. You have renounced home and parents. You have renounced origin, where you come from, and property. You have renounced your own will. You have renounced friendship. That is what the teaching preaches. That is what the teachings preach. That is the will of the illustrious one. That is what you wished yourself. Tomorrow, Govinda, I will leave you. This is very sad, right? This is what happens in our lives. Sometimes we choose a way that takes us away from our friends, and it's very sad. But that's what happens. We have to follow our way, even leaving our friends sometimes, and it's very sad. So we will start the next video, and we will go to the finish and see how Siddhartha talks to the Buddha. Okay, make sure to like and subscribe. Watch for the next video, and make sure to comment at RJK English, and we can talk more. Okay, see you guys.